Imagine for a moment, the rhythm of a journey. Maybe that gentle rumble beneath you. The clickety-clack of the wheels, maybe a landscape flashing past the window. You're heading somewhere, bags packed, feeling, I don't know, maybe a bit excited.
Yeah, that familiar travel feeling.
Exactly. But on those exact same rails, breathing the same air, moving just as fast, there was this other journey happening. An invisible, just chilling network. Immense suffering. Millions of unseen people being transported.
It's a really profound contrast, isn't it, to that ordinary trip? So for this deep dive, we're using the sources you, our listeners, sent us to really dig into the hidden reality of prisoner transport in the Soviet Gulag.
Right.
Our whole mission here is to show how such a huge system of suffering could just exist right out of sight. We want to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights, basically give you a shortcut to being really well informed on this vital part of history.
And today, we're diving right into the heart of the Gulag Archipelago, focusing on the ships of the archipelago. So we're talking about the trains, the vehicles that moved millions of what the source calls invisible slaves across these huge, often unseen networks. Just think about it. That typical four-person compartment on the pleasant trip you imagined, well, in a Zack car, that same space might hold 14 people, or 25, or, get this, even 30 tormented souls.
Wow.
It's a journey happening on the exact same rails, but just utterly separate from the world we know.
And what's really striking from the sources is how immense, truly immense, and yet, like you said, invisible this spellbound archipelago was.
Spellbound archipelago.
Yeah, it refers to thousands of these invisible islands stretching all the way from the Bering Strait almost down to the Bosphorus. Not actual islands, obviously, but this huge network of prisons and camps. And this wasn't some slapdash operation. It was, and the source emphasizes this, a thoroughly developed system. It was meticulously created over dozens of years by well-fed, uniformed, unhurried people. It was intentional, a calculated design.
Purpose-built for suffering, basically.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And the transport methods were chillingly specific. The sources talk about transit prisons, smaller camp transit points, these sealed steel ships, the railroad cars, especially Chris and Zack cars, and then waiting for them, the versatile Black Marias.
Okay, but how? How could something so big, so grim, stay hidden right there in plain sight?
Well, the sources explain that the loading and unloading, of these dirty faces, it happened far, far from the passenger platform at the big stations. Or at smaller ones, it was in blind alleyways between two warehouses. Prisoners were deliberately kept from looking around. Their eyes were meant to be fixed only on the steps right in front of them.
So total isolation even in public spaces?
Exactly. It wasn't just about hiding the suffering itself. It really shows the state's chilling ability to normalize and just make immense brutality unseen, creating this parallel reality right under everyone's noses.
It's almost, incomprehensible to think that you, the ordinary traveler, may be busy with your suitcases, your string bags. You might pass right by a train carrying, 100 crowded prisoner destinies, sharing the same physical space, just seconds apart, and you'd be completely oblivious to the dark and suppressed horror inside. The train pulls out, and 100 crowded prisoner destinies, tormented hearts, are borne along the same snaky rails, past the same fields, posts, and high stacks as you.
It's a powerful image. Let's dig into the Zack car itself. The prisoners apparently started calling it the Stolypin car, or just Stolypin.
Stolypin.
Yeah. And while there were earlier forms of prisoner transport, Lenin himself traveled to Siberian exile in just an ordinary third-class car back in 1896.
Right.
And there's a painting by Yaroshenko showing a kind of, naive attempt to convert a fourth-class car. The Stolypin car became, quote, universal and exclusive, only from 1930 on.
So, okay, let's get specific. What was the inside of these Zack cars actually like? How were they set up for this horror?
Right, well, picture an ordinary passenger car, but 5 of its 9 compartments were sectioned off for prisoners.
Okay.
But instead of solid walls, the compartments were separated by these diagonal gratings, like the kind one sees in station parks, the source says. So completely open for inspection by the guards.
So no privacy at all.
None. And critically, these prisoner compartments had no proper exterior windows, just tiny barred blinds. So from the outside, the car looked like maybe a baggage car, something unremarkable.
Descriptive.
Very. And the doors were these sliding iron frames with bars, like cages.
Yeah, the sources use that exact comparison, don't they? Calling it a menagerie where pitiful creatures resembling human beings are huddled there in cages. What does that tell us?
It's more than just a description. It's a real indictment. Because the source adds, and this is really telling, in menageries, they never crowd the wild animals in so tightly.
Wow. Worse than animals.
It shows this profound, systematic devaluation of human life. Prisoners were treated worse than wild animals in captivity. It says so much about how the regime viewed these people.
And the crowding itself,
Yeah.
it was just staggering. You mentioned engineers calculated maybe 11 people per compartment.
Yeah, non-prisoner engineers, the source specifies.
Yeah.
But the normal complement was 22. Often it hit 25, 26, sometimes even 35.
35. In a space for maybe 6 or 8 comfortably.
It's horrific. The sources tell the story of V. Timofeevsky, who literally hung suspended between other human beings for days. His legs couldn't even touch the floor.
Oh my God.
And guards would eventually haul out corpses, not right away, maybe after a day or two, just to make a tiny bit more space.
Yeah.
Timofeevsky's journey like this lasted 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Suspended.
And the official explanation, not intentional torture, just, problems with our transportation. Problems with transportation.
Right.
That almost makes the punishment cell sound appealing.
Well, that's the perverse irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source points out that the small punishment cell, which was designed to isolate maybe 3 or 4 prisoners, it actually became a blessing of comfort and space for anyone briefly put in there.
A blessing.
It shows how utterly broken, how inhumane the system was, that its designated punishment actually offered relief from the normal conditions.
So beyond just the crowding, what was daily life like? Food, water, the basics.
Brutally regimented.
Yeah.
And minimal. For the entire trip, days on end sometimes. Prisoners got only salt herring or maybe dry smoked Caspian carp. That was it.
No hot food. Nothing substantial.
No hot meals.
Yeah.
Even basic stuff like grits or canned meat was withheld. The official fear was apparently that they might stuff themselves.
Stuff themselves on herring. It sounds more like deliberate deprivation.
Well, exactly. And that leads right into the water situation. It was calculated withholding. Yes. The stated reasons were logistical, not enough guards, too far to haul water, plus this idea that it was somehow insulting for Soviet soldiers to carry water for enemies of the people.
And insulting, right.
But the horrific outcome, the real reason, according to the source, was simple and intentional. Deny them water so they wouldn't need the toilet as much.
Oh, that's vile. Control through thirst.
It's control through orchestrated suffering and deep humiliation. And even when they did get water, it was dehumanizing. Maybe 2 government-issue mugs shared among dozens of people.
Mugs?
Yeah, leading to these awful arguments about who drank first. The supposed order was healthy people, then those with TB, then those with syphilis.
Oh, God. Just sharing disease like that.
It's horrific. And then the toilet. Just going to the toilet became this major operation.
How so?
It required 3 guards for one prisoner at a time, which meant holding up maybe 30 people in a compartment, 120 in the whole car, just for one person to go.
A logistical nightmare designed to inflict maximum difficulty.
And humiliation. The source tells this story of a one-legged German prisoner, Schultz, who was beaten and mocked because he was slow. It just shows how deeply the system aimed to break people, even over basic bodily function.
And privacy, hygiene.
Non-existent. Toilet doors were kept open. The guard watched constantly. No washing hands. The command was, don't you touch that.
Ugh.
So incredibly unsanitary conditions, profound humiliation, and if someone soiled it themselves, they were forced to pick it up and carry it away themselves.
Why? What was the justification?
The chilling logic was fewer trips to the toilet meant they needed less water and less food because then they wouldn't complain of loose bowels and stink up the air.
It's just layer upon layer of degradation.
And perhaps one of the most devastating layers was mixing political prisoners with hardened criminals.
Ah, yeah. I read about that. Historically, politicals were treated differently, weren't they?
They were, especially in the late 19th, early 20th century. They often got special quarters, separate carriages sometimes, food allowances. Prison officials might even apologize for mistreatment. They were seen as sort of equal opponents.
Right.
They kept a consciousness of political freedom.
But that changed dramatically.
Completely. After the 1920s, the source says, all of us becoming KRs, counter-revolutionaries, that distinction just vanished. Political prisoners who protested being mixed with criminals were met with laughter.
Laughter.
Yeah, and the jailers would sincerely reply, all are criminals here. It must have been utterly crushing.
So what happened when they were thrown together?
It led to what the source calls the first devastating encounter. Political prisoners, often intellectuals, suddenly found themselves sharing a cell with these cruel, loathsome snouts, hardened criminals called goroloids, often tattooed, seemingly unaffected by prison life. And these criminals would immediately start plundering their belongings, often violently. The source describes seeing a small cross on a criminal's neck, feeling a brief sense of relief, only for it to immediately turn into violent threats.
It's hard to grasp why the political prisoners, the intellectuals, didn't fight back against this right away. What was stopping them?
Well, think about it. They were already physically and psychologically shattered from interrogation. They'd been taught that any kind of collective action, any getting together, was a serious crime in itself.
Right. Organization was forbidden.
Exactly. They saw the jailers, the blue caps, as their only enemies. They completely failed to grasp, as the source puts it, that the tattooed chests were merely the rear end of the blue caps.
Meaning the criminals were basically extensions of the guards' power.
Precisely. It was a chilling strategy of divide and conquer. The state used one group of prisoners against another to maintain absolute control.
And it gets even more twisted, doesn't it? The common criminals actually had it easier in some ways.
Incredibly so. The sources reveal they often got lighter sentences, were frequently included in amnesties, and they were even sort of supported by the chiefs and blue shoulder boards, the prison authorities, who saw them as, quote, one of our own people.
One of our own people. Unbelievable.
They were allowed their own organization. Their thieves' law was respected. Meanwhile, any hint of collective action from the politicals was brutally crushed.
So political dissent was seen as far worse than violent crime.
That's the profound takeaway. It shows the regime's real priorities. They preferred dealing with the chaotic criminal element, maybe saw them as more predictable or even useful while systematically destroying anyone who challenged the ideology itself.
And the guards weren't just letting this happen, they were involved.
Actively complicit. The source says they slipped in their direction, meaning they helped the criminals. They became thieves themselves, taking stolen goods from the politicals, sometimes giving the criminals vodka or other luxuries in return.
So the guards were part of the plunder.
Absolutely. There are accounts of officers confiscating belongings themselves if no thieves happened to be in that transport. Or the Sonnen and Mereshkov case, where prisoners were basically forced to ransom their own rations back from the guards using whatever few possessions they had left.
How can anyone maintain hope in that kind of environment where even the guards are predators?
It must have utterly destroyed any shred of trust or hope for justice. It hammered home that the entire system was designed purely to exploit and dehumanize. There was no recourse. The psychological weight of knowing your supposed guards were also your tormentors. It's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
And the source captures this perfectly with that arrival scene at Novosibirsk. A new officer comes on board, asks the standard question, any complaints against the convoy? And the prisoners, just completely broken, stay silent. Total silence. And the source concludes that moment with the devastatingly simple words. This was Russia.
Wow. Okay, let's shift slightly. What about the journey itself, the not knowing?
That was another layer of torture. Prisoners had no tickets, zero idea of their destination. They had to rely on maybe overhearing a station announcement shouted out or trying to figure out direction from the sun. Subtle clues like that.
Constant uncertainty on top of everything else.
Exactly. And there's a really grim irony you mentioned about camp names. You find Gorky camps, even a mine named after Maxim Gorky, the famous writer.
Gorky camps.
Yeah. The source notes, there are no Pushkin-Tolstoy camps, but there are Gorky camps. It's just this jarring contrast, a celebrated literary figure's name linked forever to this brutal network of forced labor and suffering.
Amidst all this darkness, were there any attempts? Any sparks of connection or resistance? How did people even try to communicate with the outside?
There were incredibly desperate attempts. The source describes prisoners scribbling notes on tiny scraps of crumpled paper, using maybe a bit of pencil lead they'd hidden.
Risking discovery, obviously.
Hugely risky. Then they'd fold the paper into a tiny triangle and try to throw it out through the toilet hole when the train stopped at a station, just hoping, against all odds, that someone might find it and actually mail it.
An incredible act of hope.
It really was. And this whole experience, this journey, it forced a massive philosophical shift in people. The advice passed around was stark. Stop being a sucker. Give up your possessions immediately, without a fight, because they'll be stolen anyway.
Just accept the loss.
Yeah. They even used the second law of thermodynamics as a grim analogy. All differences tend to level up to disappear. Everything gets stripped away.
Leading to that truly bleak piece of advice.
Right. Own only what you can always carry with you. No languages, no countries, no people. Let your memory be your travel bag. It's the ultimate stripping away of everything identity, connection, possessions. a lesson learned through unimaginable suffering.
But even in that bleakness, did the sources mention any sort of remarkable encounters, moments of humanity?
They did, surprisingly. There's a story of Max Salter, a French soldier who was drugged, shipped off, sentenced to years. It shows how the Gulag just swallowed people up, even foreigners.
Wow.
And then there's the almost unbelievable tale of Ivan Kovarchenko, a defiant Soviet major who apparently rode a horse right into a commandant's office, started collecting tolls on a bridge he'd saved from demolition, escaped prison, raided an embassy for pear.
Seriously, pears.
That's the story, only to be recaptured and personally interrogated by Abakumov, the head of state security himself. These wild stories show incredible resilience, even if futile.
But maybe quieter moments of connection, too.
Yes, definitely. There's a really moving account of a night conversation in a Stolypin car. It was between Eric Arvid Anderson, described as a dignified British officer, and a young girl, the daughter of a Moscow doctor.
How do they even talk?
They were in separate barred compartments in the dark, but they whispered through the grating. They shared their incredible stories, and the source says that through her voice, just listening to her, Arvid felt he was seeing the real Russia.
That's powerful. A human connection piercing through the bars and the darkness.
It really is. But then you have the sheer logistical cruelty, too. This thing called the pendulum.
The pendulum.
Yeah, prisoners would just be shunted back and forth between stations for days, sometimes without food. Why? Simply because the local guards weren't ready for pickup, or there was some bureaucratic error.
So not even deliberate malice, just systemic incompetence causing immense suffering.
Exactly. It highlights how inefficiency could be just as devastating as intentional cruelty in the system.
And then finally, arrival at a station. What was that like?
Chaotic and dehumanizing. Guards would just scream in unison, "Sit down, sit down, sit down,"
Yeah.
forcing prisoners onto the filthy ground immediately.
Why? What was the purpose of that?
Pure control. It was calculated to prevent any chance of escape or organized resistance, to make them involuntarily squirm and crouch close to the ground, instantly asserting dominance, making them feel small and powerless.
And this happened in public. What about onlookers?
Yes, often in public. And it was awkward for the free people watching. The source says some would drop their heads, maybe out of guilt or shame. But others, especially old women or camp veterans who knew the score, they'd bravely try to throw scraps of bread or cigarettes to the prisoners, even with guards threatening them.
Small acts of defiance from the outside, too.
A little glimmer. But the dehumanization continued. There were commands like link arms, or even take hold of your heels.
Take hold of your heels? How does that even work?
It forces you into a completely contorted, immobile position. Extreme control methods that turn prisoners into, as the source puts it, dirty, gray, clumsy creatures. A caricature of humanity. Unable to move freely, unable to even look around, stripped of all autonomy.
And then came the Black Mariahs.
Right, the Black Ravens, as they were often called. You mentioned them earlier. Brutal, cramped interiors, sometimes just an armored box, other times these tiny, honeycomb-like individual closets inside.
Despite having deceptive signs on the outside like bread.
Or drink Soviet champagne, That contrast, the cheerful slogan hiding the horrific reality inside, it became a really chilling symbol of the whole Gulag system itself. Deception covering brutality.
And these vehicles were often a critical point.
A real bottleneck of the archipelago, yes. The extreme crowding in the Black Mariahs often led to the absolute worst abuses. The source mentions a shocking account from 1946.
I remember reading that. It was horrific.
Yeah, a young bride, sentenced just for leaving her job without permission, was gang raped in a Black Mariah in broad daylight. And the source poses this devastating question. Was it the thieves who did this to her, and not the jailers and not her chief?
Highlighting the utter collapse of responsibility, the complicity.
But who's ultimately responsible when the lines blur completely? And looking at the broader human cost, the source gives us one last incredibly powerful scene.
What's that?
It's Lieutenant Colonel Oleg. He's crammed into a Black Mariah, chaotic, dark, and he learns his wife's fate from another prisoner, just whispered words amidst the noise. The prisoner says, she became, well, a little confused, you understand.
Oh, wow. Just devastating ambiguity.
It perfectly encapsulates the raw individual tragedy hidden within this vast, impersonal, cold machine of the Gulag. Just a few words conveying an unbearable loss.
So we've really taken a journey here, haven't we? A deep dive through these ships of the archipelago. And It's clear it wasn't just transport, it was a meticulously designed system. Control, dehumanization, exploitation.
Absolutely. A system where the lines between the jailer and the criminal just completely blurred, where basic human dignity was systematically ground down, and where whole lives could just vanish into this unseen network.
Yeah. The information you provided, listener, it's really allowed us to see the systemic nature of it all, the surprising, awful facts about how prisoners were treated, and the deep, deep psychological scars it left.
It's a really stark reminder, isn't it, of how a vast, horrifying machine can just operate almost invisibly yet fundamentally shape a nation, its history, its people.
So it leaves us with a thought, maybe. In a world where entire systems can operate invisibly, systems designed to strip everything away from people, what does it even mean to cling to things, to possessions, to identity, or even just to the simple act of looking another person in the eye?
And maybe what responsibility do we have looking back at histories like this to try and see what might remain unseen today?
A heavy thought. What stands out most to you from this deep dive?